The last time I saw my father, he looked more like a stranger than a parent. Still, pale, dressed in a suit I'd never seen him wear in life. I stood at the edge of the room during the funeral, watching people cry for a man who, in my story, was more absence than presence. They called him strong, disciplined, a quiet provider. Quiet. That part was true, but for me his silence wasn't noble. It was a wall I had spent my whole life trying to climb. A wall with no top, no cracks, no footholds. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I didn't know what to feel. How do you grieve someone who was never really yours? How do you mourn a relationship that never began? I was his daughter, yes, but that word felt foreign when attached to him. We shared blood, a last name, a house, but never a conversation that lasted more than a few clipped sentences. Never a shared laugh, never a real moment. He was always there, at the dinner table, in the living room, in the driver's seat, but never with me. I grew up learning how to exist in the same space as his silence, trying to make myself small enough to not disrupt the stillness he seemed to prefer. I remember being 5, showing him a drawing I made. He glanced at it, nodded once, and returned to his newspaper. No smile. No, "That's beautiful, honey." Just a nod. I learned to stop bringing him things after that. The day of the funeral, people kept coming up to me. "You must be devastated. Your father adored you, you know. He was so proud of you." I wanted to scream. How could they say that? Based on what? Based on the way he avoided eye contact when I walked into the room. Based on the years of school plays, graduations, birthdays where he sat in the back, arms crossed, face unreadable. They didn't know him, but neither did I, and now I never would. The finality of it was suffocating. There would be no late-night apology. No, "I did the best I could." No moment of clarity. Just this, a quiet man in a quiet coffin, leaving behind nothing but questions, and a silence even heavier in death than it had been in life. After the service, I stayed behind, alone. I walked to the casket and stared at him one last time. He looked peaceful, but I didn't. I whispered, "Why didn't you talk to me?" No answer, of course. Only the hum of the air conditioning and the echo of a relationship that never had a beginning. I left that day with a hollow kind of sadness. Not grief, not yet. Something else. Something colder. Like standing in the ruins of a house you never lived in but always hoped one day would be yours. I thought that was the end of it. But a week later, while sorting through his things, I found a letter, folded, yellowed, hidden in the back of a locked drawer. My name written in his handwriting. And for the first time in my life, my father spoke. I used to believe that silence meant safety, that if no one yelled, no one was angry. If no one cried, nothing was wrong. If nothing was said, everything was fine. But silence has weight, and in our house, it was heavy. My father wasn't cruel. He wasn't violent. He didn't drink or cheat or disappear. He was there, always there, but in the way a statue is there in a room. Still, impenetrable, unreachable. As a child, I didn't know that kind of presence could feel like absence. I just knew that I didn't understand him. He'd come home from work, hang his coat, sit in the same chair, read the same newspaper. We'd eat dinner in near silence, my mother filling the space with small talk that never landed. I'd ask questions. I'd try. For years, I tried, but he rarely answered with more than a few words. "How was your day?" "Fine." "Do you like my project?" "It's okay." "Can we talk?" "Not now." Always not now. Eventually, I stopped asking, but I never stopped wondering what was wrong with me. Because when you're a child, and a parent withholds affection or attention, you don't assume it's about them. You assume it's about you, that you are unworthy of love, unworthy of being known. And that belief becomes the blueprint. It builds how you love, how you speak, how you exist in the world. For me, it meant chasing the approval of people who would never give it. It meant overachieving to prove I mattered. It meant fearing closeness, even while craving it desperately. It meant becoming emotionally fluent in every language except my own. I remember one moment, I was about 9, when I got sick at school. They called home and it was my dad who picked me up. I sat in the passenger seat, shivering, a fever making my vision blur. I looked at him, hoping for comfort. He drove in silence the whole way home. Didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't touch my forehead. Didn't speak. When we got home, he handed me a glass of water and left the room. And I remember thinking, this is just how it is. Some people have fathers. I have this. I carried that truth with me like a stone in my chest. Heavy. Constant. Unchanging. As I got older, I tried to bridge the gap. I told him about my dreams. I invited him to events. I gave him books I thought he'd like. I tried everything I could to break through the silence. But it never worked. It was like knocking on a door that had been nailed shut from the inside. And eventually, I stopped knocking. I started to believe that was the only kind of father I'd ever have. A man who did his duty but never let me in. A man who gave me food, shelter, stability, but never himself. And I told myself I didn't need it, that I was fine, that I was strong. But that wasn't strength. That was survival. And now, as I held the letter in my hands, my name written in his unmistakable handwriting, I realized something terrifying. Maybe he had been listening. Maybe he had seen me. And maybe I had no idea who this man really was. I was 10 the first time I decided to make my father proud. Not because he asked. Not because he offered praise that made me want more. But because I was starving. And a child will do anything for affection, even if it never comes. So I started collecting achievements like currency, perfect grades, first place ribbons, honor roll certificates. Each one I'd bring home with trembling hope, holding them out like offerings to a God that never answered. He'd nod. Sometimes he'd say, "Good." Never, "I'm proud of you." Never, "That's amazing." Never, "I see how hard you've worked." Just, "Good." And I told myself that was enough. That maybe I was expecting too much. That some fathers just were like that. So I pushed harder. By high school, I was top of my class. I won a statewide writing contest. I thought, this will be it. This will be the moment he breaks. He read the article in the newspaper. He clipped it out and stuck it in a drawer. Never mentioned it again. No hug. No smile. No, "I'm proud you're mine." The silence wasn't just painful. It was erasing. I began to feel like I didn't exist unless I did something. And so I kept doing. College. Scholarships. Degrees. Still, no words. Still, that same distant stare. Like I was a stranger he tolerated, not a daughter he loved. My mother once told me, "That's just how he is. He doesn't talk much." As if that explained it. As if that justified the hollowness I felt. But I never gave up. Not until the day I brought home someone I was serious about. A person who made me feel safe, seen, loved. I introduced them to my father, heart pounding, expecting, I don't know, something. He nodded, and then he left the room. I found out later he had told my mother, "I don't get it. She'll grow out of it." He never asked about them again. That was when something in me cracked. Not because I needed his approval. I had stopped hoping for that long ago. But because I realized I had been performing my entire life, dancing for a man who never looked up from his chair. And for what? For the hope that one day, I'd be enough for him to speak. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't unkind. But he wasn't there. Not in the way that mattered. Not in the way I needed. And so I stopped trying. We drifted. More than we already had. Years passed. Calls became holidays. Holidays became cards. Cards became nothing. And then he died. And left a letter. With my name. Folded. Sealed. Waiting. As if all the words he never said had been trapped inside one envelope. Waiting for a moment he would never live to see. I stared at it for days. Scared. Angry. Hopeful. Terrified that maybe it would be empty. Like all the rest. Or worse. That it would be everything I needed. Far too late. The drawer was stiff. I had to yank it open with both hands. The wood creaking like it didn't want to let go. It was the last place I looked. After the closets, the boxes, the desk. After sorting through dusty photo albums filled with strangers' names and birthdays I'd never heard of. And there it was. Folded carefully. No envelope. My name written on the outside in small, precise letters. Lena. Just Lena. Not my daughter. Not to Lena. Just my name, the way he always said it. Short, clipped, without weight. Except now, seeing it like this, something inside me tightened. This wasn't a note tucked into a book. This had been hidden, left for me, on purpose. My fingers trembled as I held it. The paper was soft with age, like it had been written years ago. Maybe it had. Maybe he'd written it and never had the courage to give it to me. Or maybe he was waiting for the right moment. Except now, that moment would never come. He was gone. And this letter, this thing, was the only conversation I'd ever get. I sat on the edge of his bed, the room still heavy with the scent of his cologne and old wood, and just stared at it. I didn't open it right away. I held it like a relic, like it might shatter in my hands. Because no matter what was inside, I knew one thing. Once I read it, everything would change. Either it would be another disappointment, a hollow gesture, or it would be the words I had ached to hear my entire life. I wasn't ready for either, but I was more afraid of never knowing. So I unfolded it, slowly. The handwriting was neat, measured, like everything else about him. And then I read the first line. I never knew how to speak to you, and that is my greatest regret. I couldn't breathe. For a moment, the words blurred. My body forgot how to hold still. My hands tightened around the edges of the paper like it might fly away. I kept reading. You reminded me too much of myself. That's not your fault. It was mine. I saw your fire, your questions, your emotions, and I didn't know what to do with them, because no one ever did that for me. My heart cracked open. This wasn't a confession. It was a mirror. I grew up in a house where silence meant safety, where words were dangerous, where men didn't speak unless it was to command or correct. I thought I was doing the right thing by staying quiet. I thought I was protecting you from me, but all I did was push you away. Tears fell. Not loud sobs, just tears. Heavy, silent, old. I was proud of you. Always. Every award. Every time you stood up for yourself. Every time you spoke when I couldn't. I just didn't know how to say it without breaking the only armor I had. Armor. That's what it had always been. His silence. His distance. His refusal to meet me where I lived. In emotion. In language. In need. He wasn't cruel. He was scared. Of me. Of what I represented. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I know it's late, but I needed you to know. It wasn't your fault. You were never too much. I just wasn't enough of a man to meet you there. I clutched the paper to my chest. Not because it healed everything, but because it finally said everything. He had written what he couldn't say aloud. And in doing so, he had given me something I never thought I'd get from him. Not affection. Not attention. Not even love, exactly. But something almost as powerful. Truth. I read the letter again that night. Then again the next morning. Each time I felt like I was learning to hear him for the first time. Not the man I'd known, but the one buried beneath layers of fear, tradition, and silence. The letter wasn't long, barely a page, but in it my father said more than he had in my entire life. And that paradox, those few paragraphs holding decades of absence, was almost too much to hold. I had spent years telling myself I didn't need his words, that I was strong without them, that I had outgrown the need for his approval, for his presence, for his voice. But I was wrong. I had needed him. I needed him when I was 6 and cried after a nightmare, and he passed me in the hallway without a word. I needed him when I brought home my first trophy and waited for praise that never came. I needed him when my heart broke for the first time, and all he said was, "You'll be fine." I needed him when I left home and looked back, hoping for a wave, a nod, anything to say he was proud I was flying, even if I had to jump alone. And now, years later, in ink faded slightly at the edges, he was finally telling me. He saw me. He knew. He cared. His words were rough, imperfect, not poetic, not crafted to impress, but they were real, raw. He wrote, "I watched you grow up brave in ways I never was. You scared me sometimes, not because you were wrong, but because you were free. I didn't know how to love that, but I tried, in my own way. I failed. I know that. I hope one day you'll forgive me, even if I don't deserve it." That line stayed with me. You scared me. I had never considered that. That my passion, my fire, my refusal to be quiet, things I once believed were reasons he didn't love me, were in fact the very things that intimidated him. He wasn't rejecting me. He was running from his own reflection. He wrote, "You were always enough. I just wasn't enough of a father. I didn't know whether to scream or collapse. So I did neither. I just sat, with the letter, with his words, with the strange sensation of being held by something he couldn't give me in life, but somehow found a way to offer in death. This wasn't closure. Not exactly. It didn't erase the years. It didn't rewrite the birthdays missed, the hugs that never came, the long car rides filled with heavy air and the sound of my own breath, but it did give meaning to the silence. It did make space for understanding. And understanding is the beginning of peace. I folded the letter gently and slid it into the back of my journal, the one where I had written pages about him over the years. Questions, rants, pleas. Now finally, I had an answer. Not to everything, but to the most important thing. Did he love me? Yes. In his own flawed, fractured, terrified way. He did. And he had found the only voice he could, his written one, to say so. For most of my life, I wore his silence like a wound I couldn't name, a kind of hollow in the center of my chest that I learned to live around, like a house built around an old, boarded-up room. I didn't talk about it much, not with friends, not even in therapy for a long time, because how do you explain missing something you never had? A father's warmth, a father's laughter, a father's voice calling your name, not in reprimand, but in affection. I thought he was cold, but after reading the letter, I understood something I hadn't been willing to see before. He wasn't cold, he was broken. A man built out of rules and rigidity. A man whose own childhood, I now suspect, had left him emotionally amputated. A man who was never taught that softness and masculinity could coexist. Who confused stoicism with strength. Who thought love had to be quiet, or worse, invisible. He never said much about his past. But now, reading between the lines of that letter, I saw it. The shadows, the shame, the inherited silence passed down like an heirloom no one wanted but everyone carried. He had built walls around himself not to keep me out, but to keep his own pain in. And I had spent years pounding on those walls, thinking if I could just be enough, he'd open the door. But the door was never locked. He just didn't know how to open it. The anger I'd held for so long began to shift, not disappear, not instantly, but soften. I stopped seeing him as the villain in my story. He wasn't the monster I'd made him out to be in my darkest moments. He was just human, wounded, and so was I. I thought about all the ways I had mirrored him, without realizing it. The relationships I sabotaged because I didn't know how to trust love. The way I withheld affection when I felt vulnerable. The way I stayed silent, even when I desperately wanted to speak. I had become fluent in the same emotional language he used, but I wanted to be the one who broke the cycle, and that meant letting go of the need for a fantasy father, the one who would show up one day with open arms and overdue apologies, and embracing the truth of the one I had, a man who failed me in many ways, but who, in the end, tried. Not perfectly, not completely, but with the only voice he had left, and for the first time, that was enough. The letter didn't fix everything, but it gave me permission to feel it all. The grief, the love, the rage, the relief, to feel it fully. And in feeling it, I began to heal. Not because he changed, but because I could finally say, he wasn't cold, he was broken, and now, maybe, I didn't have to be. Forgiveness is strange. People talk about it like it's a clean act, a moment, a release. But what I've learned is that forgiveness isn't something you do once. It's something you keep choosing, over and over again. Especially when the person you're forgiving isn't there to say they're sorry. Especially when you're not even sure if they deserve it. For a long time, I thought forgiving my father meant letting him off the hook, as if by doing so, I'd be erasing the years of absence, the missed birthdays, the emotional void I lived inside. I thought it meant pretending his silence hadn't shaped me. But forgiveness isn't about pretending something didn't hurt. It's about deciding that hurt doesn't get to keep defining you. And for me, that decision began with one sentence in that letter. You were never the problem. 5 words, but they cracked open everything. Because for decades I had believed I was the problem, that I was unworthy of attention, that I was too intense, too emotional, too loud for a man who only ever dealt in quiet. I blamed myself, and that blame seeped into every corner of my life, into relationships, friendships, my own voice. So when he wrote that sentence, I didn't just hear it from him, I heard it from myself, and I believed it. Finally, forgiving him didn't mean forgetting the pain. It didn't mean rewriting history to paint him as a good father. He wasn't. He was absent. He was emotionally unreachable. And I was alone in that silence for far too long. But he tried. Not when I needed him most. Not when I was a child or a teenager or even a young adult desperate for connection. He tried at the end. And sometimes, that's all some people have to give. It's not fair, but it's real. I don't forgive him because he earned it. I forgive him because I no longer want to carry the weight of resentment. Because I no longer want to live inside the narrative of a daughter unloved. Because now, I know that love was there, broken, buried, misshapen, but there. And because if I want to live fully, I have to let that part of the story close. I lit a candle the night I forgave him. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't speak his name. I just sat there, the letter in my lap, and whispered, I'm done holding this. The rage, the ache, the story of silence. I'm done. And something shifted. Not loudly, not instantly, but enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to stand lighter. Enough to see him as a man who failed me, and still, somehow, mattered. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give the other person. It's a door you walk through yourself. And that night, I stepped through, and I didn't look back. I still have the letter, folded neatly, tucked inside a worn leather notebook where I've started writing again. Not to him, but to myself, because in some strange, painful, beautiful way, his letter gave me back my voice. The one I'd quieted for years. The one I'd buried beneath silence because I thought that's what love required. Restraint, self-sufficiency, invisibility. But love doesn't require you to disappear, and neither does healing. His letter didn't change the past. It didn't fix the lost time, or make the empty chairs at my graduation feel less empty, or suddenly stitch warmth into the cold memories I have of sitting across from him in the car, hoping he'd say something, anything. It didn't bring him back, but it brought me back to myself, back to the part of me that longed for connection, but learned to accept distance, back to the child who once stood at his office door, holding a picture drawn just for him, waiting to be seen. She waited so long. But now, I see her, and I say, you didn't deserve the silence. You didn't imagine the distance, and you were always worthy of love. She hears me, and she believes me. I've read that grief is just love with nowhere to go. But now, my love has somewhere to land. Not on him, not anymore, but on the life I get to build now, free from the ache of his absence. The life where I speak openly, where I cry loudly, where I love shamelessly, where I raise my voice not to fill a void, but to claim my space. His letter helped me see that silence isn't strength, that withholding isn't care, that distance isn't dignity. And now, I get to choose differently. I get to love differently, live differently. I get to show up for myself, for the people I care about, for the child I once was, and the woman I'm still becoming. His final words didn't rewrite everything, but they wrote enough. Enough to close a chapter, enough to begin again. So I say thank you, not because it was perfect, not because it was enough, but because it was honest. And that honesty, flawed, late, human, was more powerful than all the silence he left behind. If this story is touching you, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you've ever lived with someone's silence and made it mean something about you, I'm here to tell you, it never was. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were simply you. And that's worth hearing, even if it comes too late.